In the years that lie ahead, those of us who have the good fortune to lead our people will need statesmanship of a high order and God's guidance in managing the affairs of our country for the benefit of every Nigerian citizen.
One important development after the transition of Chief Obafemi Awolowo was the establishment in 1992 of the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation, the custodian of Awo's intellectual legacy. The foundation was set up as an independent, non-partisan, non-profit research institute dedicated to immortalizing the ideals of Chief Awolowo and is committed to the promotion of a socially edifying interaction between policy and scholarship. It has over the years established its credentials as a credible advocate on many issues, including education, health, the economy, and poverty alleviation. The foundation has actualized its mission mandate through various outreach programs. These include lectures, dialogues, executive leadership seminars, symposia, and more recently, our conversations. All of these are designed to provide suitable fora for rational discussion of great issues of the day in order to continue to build the idea that inspired the public and patriotic activities of Chief Awolowo. In pursuance of its axiom of generating ideas for national development, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation has ensured that its annual lecture series hold without fail, even in the face of great challenges like COVID-19. The maiden dialogue was with the theme Nigeria, the Way Forward. The foundation also organized other groundbreaking lectures, dialogues, and conversations on critical issues like the dialogue on education themed Nigeria and the challenges ahead, democracy and the rule of law, themed With Nigeria. Subsequently, on March 6, 2022, the foundation held the to which participants. In January 2009, the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation launched a year-long program in celebration of the centenary of the birth of Chief Obafemi Awolowo, with the foundation's commemorative two centenary lectures.
Doctors, nurses.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining Reform Nigeria Television this evening, Wednesday, the 12th of March, 2025. Today, we continue our discussion on the person of Chief Obafemi Awolowo, but this time around, we are looking at the webinar that was done to mark the 116th anniversary, posthumous birthday of the sage. And with me today, I have Oluseye Fatoyibo. He's joining me from his place, and I want to thank him very much for coming on. Sheye, thank you very much for being here again.
Thanks for having me. Good evening.
Yeah. So he was around last week, but he couldn't join us with the video. But today we have some video, so we want to thank him very much. I was hoping that we could finish the video introducing Awolowo, or introducing the whole program with Awolowo's short video, but you can find that video on obafemiawolowofoundation.com, and you watch a number of the videos they have there. That one is about 11 minutes, but it actually conceptualizes who Awo was and what he came out to do. So at the webinar, we had different people. The keynote speaker was a man called The keynote speaker was a man called Professor Jeffrey Sachs, a leading economist in the world. Then we had Professor Kingsley Moghalu, also an economist in Nigeria, a former deputy governor of the War Army of the Nigerian Central Bank. Then we have Professor Osage, Ehosa Osage, who was also a speaker. Then we had a couple of others. Okay, and then we also actually had a question or a comment from the governor of Oyo State. It was almost about a 4-hour program, so it's not possible for us to be able to attempt to look at the whole 4 hours. But for today, we'll be looking at we'll be watching the whole of Jeffrey Sachs' lecture. And from time to time, I will pause and ask Sheye his perspective on a couple of things. I think the man conceptualized the problem with Africa and Nigeria in particular, and he made a number of suggestions, which will be very wise for us to be able to look at. Okay, so again, I want to say thank you very much for joining the broadcast. Sheye, again, thank you so much for being with us. Just give me 1 minute. I want us to look at a particular comment by Moghalu, Stephen Moghalu. I want us to look at that. We'll start with that, and then we will continue the discussion. So,
and
I think the comment, I noted it down. The comment is at 30 minutes, from 30 minutes to 31:45. So I'll just go straight to that. At 30.00. Yeah, got it just now, but I missed it. Yes. So that's that. So let's hear what Mr. Moghalu has to say.
Risks today and tomorrow. I often say that the first thing you have to understand about economics and economies in general is that you cannot run it and you cannot understand it without two things. You've got to understand economic philosophy, and you've got to understand political economy, the impact of political events and processes on economic events. And again, this is what we see today. Some political developments in the world have, as our distinguished chairman alluded, really turned a lot of things around. And we now see the impact, especially on global trade. We see now tariff wars between the United States, and China, and Canada, and Mexico. And these tariff wars have a lot of implications. It will create inflation. It will create instability in debt markets. We already see a rise in bond yields. It will create instability in capital markets. We see stock markets dropping. It will create productivity declines. And it will create declines in competitiveness, and it will create unemployment in some countries. All these things have consequences for the world economy. Because my time is short, I will not dwell going to.
So what I wanted us to comment on or to look at, let me stop sharing it. What I wanted us to look at was that comment he made. He started by saying that he made the point that for us to even discuss the economy at all. Now, the reason why this is important is because Obafemi Awolowo was a sage. He was able to cover so many things. But very few people know that he actually desired to pursue a PhD in economics. And he had actually been given a, what do they call it? A supervisor, you know. I remember reading in his book that the name of his supervisor was Peter. You know, she was a lady. You know, so he was given a supervisor, but he couldn't pursue it because of so many things that was demanding his time. So they got Moghalu to come and speak on the economy and, of course, how the economy of this country can be better and that of Africa. And Moghalu is saying something. He says that for us to even begin to discuss the economy at all, we must understand economic philosophy. And I think he also said political philosophy. I'm not sure. I think those are the two that he explained, that the two of them are dependent on each other. So the political situation of a country or the political situation of leading nations in the world would determine what the direction of the economy of nations will go. I don't know whether you have a thought on that, Sheye. If not, we'll just go to Jeffrey Sachs.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, indeed. Professor Mongalu talked about the political economy of a society, of a country. And one mistake, I know it's changing now. A lot of Nigerians are getting invested into the politics of the country, which is a good thing. A mistake that the youth really make is they spend so much time on a lot of other things, entertainment, comedies, skits, and the rest, without then come later join politicians who are fighting themselves and all that for crumbs for positions and all that, and just pick sides without really knowing how those fights or how those political maneuverings would affect the economy. Very few people can actually interrogate the manifestos of political parties or the candidates to know how it's going to affect the economy. But every economy responds to political realities, and that's what Professor Magalu was trying to say. Right now, we see what's happening. You mentioned the issue of the US and the tariffs and all of Donald Trump. And I think for now, we see too some bias remorse from even some Americans who voted for Trump. I didn't vote for things like this because people are now seeing jobs lost. People are seeing their 401ks, their retirement savings accounts being depleted. People are seeing the stock market going down. And of course, because if people did not really, even the Americans who we think were sophisticated, did not interrogate how those is economic principles, how the economic policies and all that would affect, would intertwine with geopolitics, with their own political economics in the country. So for Nigeria, the lesson there in what President Magali is trying to say is we should be conscious of why supporting politicians, why following politics and all that. We should be conscious of what their brand of politics is going to mean for the economy, because it carries a lot of weight. We've seen what Tinubu came with. He said it even during the campaigns. The subsidies have no place in the Nigerian economy. It's a rentier system. FX, fixing the FX rate has no place in Nigeria. It's also another aspect of the rentier system. And those two have to go, which I fully support anyway. In spite of whatever negative fallouts we've had so far, I think it's still the best route to take to bail out Nigeria from the doldrums we've been all these years. Yeah. So I think it's a lesson for Nigerians, again, the young generation, to get more invested. Politics and economy go hand in hand. Why supporting our politicians? Let us also integrate how their politics would affect the economy eventually when they come in. Help us to make proper decisions. Not this one is a Muslim, this one is a Christian, this one is, things like that should not be the focus.
Awolowo's philosophy, or what he really believes, that if a nation is educated, if the larger populace of a nation is educated, the people will be able to make informed decisions. In fact, the direction that I saw the 1959 election, even though they lost that election and they came toward behind MTNC and the MPC, the direction I saw the 1959 election was going was that the action group was going to eventually begin to gain ground. Awolowo wrote, I saw in some of his writing, he could recognize that in the North, despite the fact that they were all Muslims, he could recognize that there was a divide, a major divide. And that is that there was the larger Hausa population that were being dominated by the Fulanis. And he saw that he could actually go in, Ahmadu Bello and the rest of Fulanis, he could actually go in and get the Hausas to his side. In fact, I think they even won about some 25 seats. I don't know whether it was in the Northern legislation or, I think it was in the Northern legislation. They won 25 seats and they became the opposition in the Northern legislation. So they were confident that eventually they will, with time, if not gain power, but at least begin to make a mark. Now, where I'm going to is this. Mongalu kept making this statement. He used this word populist. And I think that was the first time that I was paying some attention to what a populist society is, or populist, effect on economy or a nation. Now, populist, I believe, means that a tendency for the majority to be heading in one direction. Okay, It might be it might be a right direction, or most of the time it might be a wrong direction, but a populist government, for example, like you have mentioned Donald Trump, the American government was actually populist in the sense that a lot of people were tired of the direction the Democrats were going, and they just decided, look, whether or not Donald Trump makes the right decision, we're going to go with this guy. Now the challenge with populism is this: democracy works with numbers, okay, and the larger number, the larger number of people in a nation are not informed. Okay, so the question now I will probably want to present to you now is, share, how do we balance it? We want to win election with a populist situation. Okay, want to win election with a large number of people, but at the same time, just a few people are informed. So how do you balance it? Because ultimately, if you get a rabble rouser and somebody who can just gather people and just, hey, wait, let's all go, like Buhari did all of us in 2015, everybody will go that direction, without being informed, without making right decision. I don't know whether you're getting what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, thank you very much, DT. The thing is, the problem with populism is the real possibility of getting a demagogue. Demagoguery is the bane of populism, and that's what we see most times. People like Trump, people like this Bolsonaro in Brazil, even Milei in Argentina now, you go into demagoguery, you jump on the sentiments or the sentiments of people, in the land, their anger, and you harness it without any thinking of how you're going to solve the problem, how you're going to assuage the anger, or even if those angers, the anger is actually misplaced. You don't care. Simply ride on the emotions of people and get into power. And of course, that's the same. If a lot of these religious leaders too. Look at Jim Jones in Guyana. Look at the movement for restriction of requirements in Kenya in year 2000. A lot of people like that, even like people like Jiso Igbo, you see populism even in religion, and the demagogues take advantage. Now the antidote to this is education, and that's where Awolowo is different. While you ran on populist ideas and all that, Awolowo wanted everybody to be educated so that you can interrogate whatever it is that he was pushing. People you educate, people you give sound education, will be able to ask questions. We'll be able to question things, and we'll be able to ask, and we'll be able to make informed decisions, even against what their so-called populist leader might be pushing if it's wrong. The democracy, as wonderful as it is, has its drawbacks. And it's not today that we were just found out. Socrates found out about it, even in his own time. And many people do not know. Socrates himself was the victim of democracy because he was tried, so-called in a
democratic setting. Okay, I think Shea will still be back. So I think the point is very clear. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining our broadcast. We are still continuing on the theme of Obafemi Awolowo. We're actually looking at the webinar and some of the lectures that were prosecuted. So presently now we're going to go to the 22-minute keynote address that was given by Professor Jeffrey Sachs. And we will listen to it. Hopefully we might be able to listen to everything through. If not, at some point I will just pause and then ask my guests some questions around it. You may not see our face, you just be seeing the post video, and we'll be speaking in the background. All right, so now we move to Jeffrey Sachs. Before I go to Jeffrey Sachs, I have to share my screen. Just 1 minute, please. Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to meet together and open, I hope, some long-term strategic contacts on this important topic of Africa and its future in the coming decades. Everybody knows we're in a period of tremendous disruption and flux right now. Donald Trump is just a part of that, but he's definitely a part of that. We're in a period of massive geopolitical change. The rise of China is certainly the most significant geopolitical reality of our age, but it's not only the rise of China. Many parts of the world are experiencing a massive advance in technology, in their geopolitical weight. India is another example. Russia obviously is a great power in the world today, and I count on Africa being the same way in the coming years, as I'll speak about. But geopolitics is changing rapidly. Of course, the technological revolution is changing our economies dramatically, faster than we can keep up. The advances in artificial intelligence are very real. The advances in robotics are very real. The advances in space-based technologies, surveillance, and ability for satellite imagery change many ways that governments function. Certainly, unfortunately, ways that armies function. But these technologies are deep and are changing rapidly. At the same time, we have the environmental crises that actually have accelerated dramatically just in recent years. The Earth has warmed just in the last 4 years by 0.3 degrees Celsius. This is absolutely remarkable. In the past, that might have taken 20 years to happen. But in just 4 years, we had warming of 0.3 degrees Celsius, so we actually exceeded the 1.5 degree centigrade limit that was agreed in Paris in 2015 as the upper limit that we would do everything to avoid. And we have massive demographic change underway as well. In some parts of the world, populations have peaked and are beginning to decline. China is a case in point. China's population has peaked at 1.4 billion, but if current assessments of future fertility are borne out, China's population will be under 1 billion by the end of this century, even around 700 million, according to the United Nations forecast. At the same time, Africa's population continues to soar. It's at about 1.5 billion today. By mid-century, perhaps 2.5 billion. And according to the UN estimates, it could be as much as 3.5 billion by the end of the century, roughly 35 to 40% of the world population. So we are in the midst of massive change. I think from Africa's point of view, of course, the main question is how should Africa as a unity, Africa as the African Union, be positioned for success in the coming years? How should Africa as a union move forward rapidly, economically, technologically, and in terms of the quality of infrastructure? How should Africa as a unit face the challenges of the climate change, the threats to biodiversity, the loss of the Congo Basin rainforests to deforestation, and many other environmental challenges as well? And how should Africa participate in a very tough geopolitical world that is now multipolar, where great powers, the major powers, the United States, Russia, China, India, are in quite intense and I would say dangerous competition as well, and where those major powers have their eyes on Africa's natural resources. I started the day in a Zoom meeting in India, and the main topic of that session was strategic minerals. Well, all of the talk was about how the major powers would secure their strategic mineral supply chains. But frankly, they were talking about you. And it was mainly about competition between Russia, India, China, the United States. Africa was not in that particular discussion, but it was the object of the discussion in part. Ukraine, too, is being basically pulled to pieces right now, in part, not only, but in part, because of competition for the strategic minerals in Ukraine.
All right. Shaya, did you hear that? Shaya. Maybe I should stop Shaya. Shaya, did you hear that? Oh, Shaya was logged out. Sorry, Shaya, Shaya, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Yes,
I did.
he talked about he was in a Zoom meeting earlier in the day when where all the world powers were discussing how they could have access to strategic minerals in Africa. And they were all discussing it, and African countries were not there. So when I asked that question, I said that are we considering a recolonization possibility? One of the speakers said that the world has gone beyond militarization. We were talking about the world has gone beyond militarization, and Russia invaded Ukraine. The worst people could do is to slam them with economic sanctions. And Russia. Okay, let me just.
In fact, that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is that the US, which signed the Budapest Agreement in 1994, one of the signatories to guarantee the safety of Ukraine in the event that they gave up all their nukes to Russia 31 years ago, is coming around now to tell Ukraine that they are owing them $500 billion. Or let's say $300 billion, and we're going to take $500 billion as payback of them. And Ukrainian president should sign off the mineral rights in the country. I mean, what else? What else do you think?
Yes.
That's exactly. So I heard your question at the webinar was very pregnant. Honestly, they brush it aside, but it's a reality, DG. It is a reality.
How in the middle of the 19th century, when they came in through Lagos, invaded Lagos, and took over Nigeria, started to what did they have? They had cannon, but they had cannon.
Yeah.
Abi?
Yeah.
And then they had guns. What
Muskets.
else did they have? And then they had brave men who could go into the land. And the next thing you'll be in your village, and they'll say, a white man has come now, and there's a new order in your own land. How long will it take?
It's not. In fact,
Russia,
North Korea. In fact, the scary part is that not just Russia. We've always seen Russia like a rogue nation. We've seen Chinese like a rogue nation. They don't have democracy. America today wants to annex Canada as the 51st state. America today wants to take over Greenland from Denmark. Trump is not hiding it. So the thing is, we're discussing the rules-based order.
We're discussing.
People don't know that the rules-based order is destroyed. It's gone forever.
The people who make the rules,
they've changed it already. It's already changed. America guaranteed the rules-based order for the past 80 years. Right now, they are walking away from it. All European countries right now realize that nukes are a guarantee of survival. So everybody's going to chase nukes. We are going to enter another crazy arms race.
As simple as
it's
as simple as
so your fears are valid.
Now, what is you're a science student? What is nukes? Is it not
nuclear weapons?
Is it not E is equal to MC? E is equal to MC. Why is it that what is nuclear? Please, what is there in this thing that we can't even own it in Nigeria? If Obafemi Awolowo could back the first television station in Nigeria before France and Spain. Why is it that we cannot have? We are not thinking in this country. Oh. We are doing Natasha.
Yeah.
We're doing.
That's the problem. It's sad. We are being left behind. That's the truth. You know, sometime 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was joking with my younger brother. We talk a lot about politics and all that, you know. And I said I had a fear, and my fear was this: that the world is going gaga. The world is moving so fast on a very fast trajectory. We see what AI is doing today. We see what robots are doing. For instance, some 2 years ago on the streets of Europe, I saw a robot that was delivering pizza, delivering items. So 2 years ago, you know, yeah. And we had other people who were doing deliveries too, and it was like a competition. The robot is competing with human delivery men, you know. And where is Africa? Where is Nigeria? So we have. So I told my brother that I see the future of IT, information technology, and all that, gadgets and AI, and Africa is not featuring in it. What does it tell the world? Africa is a blight on humanity, and just throw some nukes into this continent and wipe out everybody.
We're not. This man is still going to talk about some of the advantages we have, our population, how we must invest in education, that it is worth even borrowing to invest in education, because in another 30, 40 years, it says that the how I call it, what you read back is almost like 10, 20, 100 times, so that it's worth it, you know. But he said,
of course, and that's why we.
Anyway, what led me to that? What led me to that invasion thing is that when I go to church, our church is in University of Ibadan. Our students are spending all their time praying. All their time. I thought it was bad during our time that we were all fellowship, president, fellowship leader, fellowship this. Now, all prayer, prayer.
And unfortunately,
prayer.
we are still glorifying it. You look at all. I've been saying that, you know, my views about it. And I'll keep saying it. All our so-called cathedrals that we build to the glory of God, it's to the glory of man. And I would say it anyway. Because the thing is, you keep saying you want to compete in the world of today. As how? People are not even coming to your country for religious pilgrimage. At least the Saudi Arabians can say they are getting money from pilgrimage, Islamic pilgrimage. The Jews can say they're getting money from people visiting to Jews. What are they getting from coming to you? Nothing.
It's prayer. It's prayer. They are seeing dreams. They are doing all kinds of things. Let's finish Jeffrey Sachs and see how far.
What do I envision in all of this? What would I, broadly speaking, recommend for the 1.5 billion people of Africa and what will soon be 2, 3, and more billion people in Africa? First, quite obviously, I believe that the next 40 years can be and absolutely needs to be a period of extremely rapid economic growth. And I would like Africa to follow the path that China and India have been on. China, during the period from 1980 to 2020, achieved around 10% per year economic growth. And that meant a more than 30-time increase of the size of.
Your product is great, but what's the point if nobody can find it? Think about it. Everybody looks online before buying.
The Chinese economy. India today is growing at around 6% per year. I think it will increase to around 7% per year. And that is also a rapid rate that is transforming India's economy, ending its extreme poverty, and putting India also into advanced technologies. As for Africa, I believe that Africa can and should aim for and can achieve economic growth of on the order of 8 to 10% per year for the 4 decades up to, let me say, 2063, the 100th anniversary of African unity. So I would like Africa both to model and to implement a very high growth strategy in the coming 40 years. And I think that the roadmap that China achieved and that India is achieving is very helpful for Africa as well. Africa currently is growing at 3 or 4% per year aggregate, and because of rapid population growth, around 2 or 2.5%. That's not good enough in per capita terms. That is, of course, absolutely unsafe and insufficient for Africa. So the growth rate needs to be increased markedly. And the questions are how to do that. Now, the first point is that high growth results from high investment rates. And those investments are of multiple kinds. They are most importantly investments in education and the skills of young people. And here, Africa, of course, is the youngest continent in the world. So almost half of the population is at school age, not quite, but nearly. And those young people need a quality education, and there's no time to miss for them. And when they drop out in lower secondary or before finishing upper secondary, this is a cost for a whole lifetime and a cost for the society. So the first order of business in achieving the next 40 years of rapid growth is achieving a very high level of educational attainment. And that is expensive, and it takes a long time to realize the returns, 20 years to educate a child, but the returns are the highest returns a society can achieve. In fact, around 20% internal rate of return to educate a child through upper secondary education. The second kind of investment is investment in infrastructure, transport, power grid, digital, water and sanitation, and climate resilience, all of these main categories of infrastructure. The third kind of investment is in technology and innovation. And I mention this because this isn't just a byproduct of the market forces. Governments need to invest in research and development to get the benefits of technological advance. Yes, some technologies come from abroad, but much has to be adapted locally and reconditioned locally, and that requires domestic R&D. And Africa spends a small fraction of 1% of GDP on research and development, whereas China and the US, around 3% GDP, Korea, around 4.5% of GDP. And so Africa's innovation economy needs investment by the state across Africa. And the fourth area, of course.
So before we look at the fourth area that he's looking at, I want us to appreciate a few things that he has said. Okay, so what he's saying so far is that China, that he would want Nigeria and Africa in general to imitate the economic growth of China and India, especially that started in the early 1980s. And he said that the way to be able to do this is investment in education and in the skill of young people. Yeah, I think so. Investment in education. He will still talk about education being expensive, but that it is worth borrowing to make it possible. Investment in infrastructure, investment in transport, and so on, technology and innovation. Shugo is not here, but his office is actually helping to train a number of young Nigerians in technology and social media things, AI, and a couple of other things. Now that was, I mean, the idea is excellent. It's from the Ministry of Communications or something. or technology. I can't remember what ministry that is. The problem, of course, is that the Nigerian spirit has invaded the thing, and a good and laudable idea, that started well already is beginning to know a dipping. They are not paying the facilitators. They are not meeting the part of this thing. Of course, Mr. Old style corruption is entering into the whole thing, and the young man who they are borrowing to have to train these people, and they are training them. The government is not paying back. I mean, it's just sick, and it's just like also the free education idea that Obafemi Awolowo brought. It was excellent in those days. I mean, Awo exemplified it by sending his own children to public schools. But I'm sure you know now that none of us dare send our children to any public school now in the name of free education. So let me have your thoughts now before we just continue with Sachs. If you have anything to say, if not, we'll just
Yeah, it's unfortunate. A number of years ago, too, my younger brother has talked about, mentioned that he thinks that the solution to Nigeria's problem is to have a benevolent dictator in the mold of Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore. I don't know. We've hustled to have the Nigerians had welcome military rulers. In fact, I was young when Abacha took over, but I actually welcomed him then because I thought he was tough, he was coming to change it and all that. And of course, we know it ended when Babangida came. Everybody was happy when Buhari came the first time to answer with it and all that. We just can't have it, So I don't know because politicians would always be politicians, especially in this part of the world. Because here, there's a saying in the United States that goat where you keep say make community feed. Now hunger will kill the goat because everybody's problem is actually nobody's problem.
Yeah.
We in Africa, people talk about Pan-Africanism, and I think they are just being idealistic. We have different people. Our interests do not align. There's no union among our interests. We are just united by our color, by our complexion, by our melanin and all that, by our kinky hair and all that. But we are not united in thoughts, in expectations, in dreams, in aspirations. Some of Nigeria. So that's why when politicians take the reign of power, particularly at the federal level, most don't really care about the development of the country. And because they know that if they take even development to their own side of the country, it will raise a lot of hula bala and all that. A lot of just concentrate on their own immediate families and then stash enough outside the country, ensure their kids have second passports in case the whole thing crumbles one day.
Yes, and then they bail out.
So that's the problem. So who is going to, because the solutions are here for us. Look at the innovation that Shogo is involved in. Yet, to me, it's sabotaged by government. Why won't you pay your accountable funding? Why won't you encourage the facilitators? Why won't you encourage all these things? It's as if you want it to fail. You don't care. So where is it? It's been a long time I stopped building castles in the air. We need to get it right, from our ideas. And it starts from followership, not even from leaders alone, because leaders eventually become followers. The followers become leaders eventually. Someday, So I think it should be a total orientation right from our homes. What you are doing here, Deji, with your Reform TV, with your advocacy and all that. Let's hope it catches on. Or we have to get more people to get involved in these things,
Today I went to IITA. IITA is the research center into agriculture. I just browsed their website, saw some numbers and called the numbers. They connected me with some people, and I went to see the man that was in charge of their cassava production. He was so welcoming. When he listened to me, because I told him, I said, the reason why I'm here is not like I'm hungry, but I go on evangelism in the University of Ibadan. And more than half of the time, you're having to give people money so that they can eat, so that they can listen to you. So, I give the person 500 naira, and then with that, he's hoping that he can get something to eat. Students, I'm not talking about outside the University of Ibadan. So I was thinking that, okay, if we can get even some agricultural ideas working and rolling, perhaps all these young men, they don't have job, they are hungry. Maybe we can say, okay, and if they don't do the job, then we know that's their fault. So I went to see this guy, and he took me around in his car. We went to see the people in charge of maize. We saw the people in charge of beans, and they were advising us. When we got back to his office, I said, okay, this IITA, it's like, if you look at IITA on the map of Ibadan, it's like carrying America and putting it in Nigeria. You know, I said, how are things working here? How are things, you know? And the guy said, look, it's because we have systems. There are laws work here. You know, the way they have been doing their security system from the beginning is the way I met it today. You know, you have to know that, I mean, you call the person who wants to see you, the person gives your name and your this thing, you come with a valid ID. Say you must come with a valid ID. You know, you come with a valid ID, the person, I mean, identifies you, and then you go to the place you are going to. You know, the place of like America inside Ibadan. In fact, while I was there, I was looking at brown roofs just outside. You understand? So he said there are laws. You have order. You know, there's a way things are done, and if you don't follow that system, you get punished. So he said the minute our law started to suffer in this country, and the minute our judges couldn't say the right things, that is all. So he went to IREV. He told me, he said that, can you imagine IREV? How can you say that you cannot transmit electronic results? How? That's what this man was telling me. Old man, oh, in his 60s. He said, how can you tell me you cannot transmit results? You people voted, you can't transmit. How? You know, so that is where we are. Oh, Shogo. I mean, let's finish just remarks.
You know, the thing is, you are correct, and it's a problem of it's not, like I said, it's not a problem of leadership. Okay.
No, continue. I'll finish.
Okay, it's not a problem of it's a leadership and all that. It's from foundation. The same people, the same you do complain about IRA. How did they pass the exams in universities? How many sorted lecturers? How many slept with lecturers? How many carry chips? You know, we complain, and that's why it's holistic. It should be holistic right from the cradle. Systems are manned by people, and people make these systems work. Any system can be abused. You know, the IT. I was in IT too in 2016 when I went for the soil test. I wanted to start farming. My cousin and I to do soil from our village farm and all that to take there. You know, they did everything and all that. You know, though not too much came out of it. It's still on the we've not started anyway. But I know also I understand what you are saying. I went there and I saw it was like entering a totally different country from Nigeria. The times I was there, gave them soil sample, then went to get the result and make the payment and all that. You know, so it's people are there. Nigerians work there. Human beings are there. Those people they want the system to work, and that system is working.
Okay. Yeah. Let's finish Sachs.
Is business investment, but business investment comes especially when there are skilled workers and quality infrastructure and the ability to adopt or adapt advanced technologies. Then the businesses will come in beyond the traditional investments in the mining sector or perhaps in some agriculture. They will come in on a large scale, including in the industrial economy. Now, my view is that Africa can accomplish a high rate of investment of at least 40% of GDP per year. Just like China has done, but it requires a strategy, and the strategy needs to be at the union level, in my view. So a continental free trade area is an extremely important part of that. But as we all know, it's only at the beginning. There are still massive barriers to trade within Africa, barriers that are regulatory, barriers that are border crossing barriers, barriers that are infrastructure barriers because the rail simply isn't there, or the trucking system isn't there, or the fiber and the power isn't there. But all of this, I think, is critical because Africa will not achieve rapid growth one country at a time, but it can achieve rapid growth by being the third part of the world, in addition to China and India, that has a population of 1.5 billion, a huge internal market, and with the right investments, the prospect of the fastest economic growth in the entire world. So that, for me, is the aim, is the agenda. Of course, it means making the African Union much more effective than it has been in the past. It has, in the past, been, of course, a place for many areas of agreement and progress, but it has not played the central role in the Africa-wide economy that it needs to play. And the projects of NEPAD that are the trans-border projects now need to be implemented. And the implementation needs to be in line with the continental free trade area, which has been established. This also means, and I'll just spend a couple of minutes on this and turn it back over to you, a financing strategy to achieve this rapid rate of growth based on high investment rates. My own view is that Africa's debt is not too high, it's too low. Africa should be borrowing a lot more on international capital markets, but not the kind of borrowing it's been doing. When it borrows, Africa has been borrowing at 5 years or 7 years. But the development that I'm talking about is 25 or 30-year horizons. And what happens is countries borrow 7-year Euro bonds, and then when those come due, they can't repay. And then they enter into a financial spiral, an IMF program, and it's the end. It's the end of growth. It's the end of the investment agenda. The IMF says, don't you dare try to have those high investment rates again. That's too destabilizing, and things come crashing down. But my view is the mistake is the short-term maturity of these debts, because development is a high return activity, but over a 30-year period, not over a 7-year period. If you borrow to put a child in school, 7 years can get you from first grade to 8th grade, but it can't get you the returns to repay the loan. And so, in my view, the biggest problem that Africa has faced is finance. The biggest challenge is long-term, low-cost financing. My view is that if the markets behaved properly, this would come automatically because Africa has the highest growth potential of any region of the whole world. Starting poorer, accumulating capital, Africa can grow at these astoundingly high rates. And so it's not risky to lend to Africa, but it is risky to lend for 7 years. The lending should be 25, 30, or 40 years. And this requires a financial strategy for Africa. One basic part of the strategy, by the way, should be to increase the scale of the African Development Bank. The African Development Bank borrows on the international markets and then on lends to the member states of the African Union on good terms. But the scale of the African Development Bank is tiny. It's only about $5 billion of lending per year. It should be $50 to $100 billion of lending per year. There'll be, I think, the opportunity for a major scale up of the capital of the African Development Bank in the coming year. Don't wait for the United States and Europe. Do it yourself. The US and Europe are not going to scale up the African Development Bank. The United States isn't going to put $1 into African development. It may try to steal some minerals, but it's not going to put $1 into African development. You're going to have to do this in Africa. And with countries that are really committed to long-term development. You have partners in the Gulf region, you have partners in the government of India, you have partners in the government of China. That's where Africa's long-term financing is going to come, not from the United States, alas, and not from Europe. So this is financing is key. The African Development Bank is not the only multilateral bank of Africa. There are many multilateral development banks. They should all be scaled up significantly. And maybe some new ones invented, a West African Development Bank, an East African Development Bank, a Southern African Development Bank, because the lesson is that these multilateral banks borrow on better terms than their owners. I like the example in Latin America of what's called the Andean Development Fund, or the CAF. Its owners are all below investment grade, but they got together, pooled their capital, developed the Andean Development Fund, and that fund, on behalf of their members, borrows at creditworthy rates and on lends to the owners who are not creditworthy according to the traditional credit ratings. So actually, there's leverage by unity. There's leverage by multilateralism. And don't let the US or France or the EU or the IMF or anybody else talk you out of getting the funding you need for the long-term, large-scale investments. I had the pleasure to work with the African Development Bank on a study that was just released on rapid growth for Africa to 2063, led by the chief economist, the excellent chief economist of the African Development Bank, Kevin Urama. And that report is an analytical basis, in my view, for how the African Union can move forward on this high growth agenda. Nigeria obviously has a leadership role to play in this. As the largest economy, the most populous nation in Africa, with so many leaders in finance and in business. So I really want you to take the lead, but not only for Nigeria's development, but for Africa-wide, because if Africa succeeds as a continental scale economy, Nigeria will boom, and it will boom as part of this overall continental scale success. So in the meantime, it's going to be a noisy environment. Donald Trump will pull out of the Paris Agreement. Yesterday, the United States vetoed a very standard UN General Assembly resolution because the US said it endorsed this, that the resolution endorsed the Sustainable Development Goals, which the US government said is not in the interest of the United States. It's unbelievable. We're in a nasty period of time. Okay, the United States says that's our self-interest. They don't know what their self-interest is. But don't be perturbed. Don't be put off. This is Africa's time. And look at what China accomplished. Look at what India accomplished. Act as a unity. 55 countries, that's the legacy of European imperialism, that there are 55, but think like one and act like one. And believe me, Africa's success in the next 40 years will be the biggest success on the whole planet. So thank you for letting me share these brief remarks with you. I hope that something resonated with that. And if so, I would look forward to continuing to brainstorm with you on such ideas.
All right, so that's Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Sheye, can I have your thoughts, if you don't mind? If not, we'll just take the investments up.
Yeah, the Jeffrey Sachs, President Jeffrey Sachs mentioned about the development institutions and all that should be devoted strictly to African development. And if you, I don't know if you know about it, Nigeria succeeded in getting citing an Africa Energy Bank in Nigeria. It's supposed to take off with a capital base of $5 billion. Of course, Nigeria will be looking for money and other, to raise their own capital, their own share of the capital and other investors. But there's no way around it. Debt is what develops countries, you develop nations. You need money, and this money must come from somewhere. You must borrow it to start your investment and all that. But eventually, when you go out to the developed world, you see what debt does to them. Long-term debt. That's what drives the economy. That's what makes prosperities. People do not count cash in their hand, carry cash in their account or whatever to go and buy infrastructure, to go and buy cars, build houses or something. You take loans, and so also their countries too. Most of them do not even get involved in business the way the Nigerian government tries to get it to involve in business and all that. It's simply create a regulatory framework for business to thrive. And
how do we take long-term loans in the corrupt environment?
That is the problem. Exactly, that's the problem. Because even the ones we take, they siphon it. The problem is not that the loans are there. We take the loans and we spend it on stupid things. They take the loans and they share it. That's the easy problem. Is the problem, is the pain. So I don't know. Jeffrey Sachs' ideas are good, but he's talking to Africans.
He finished on an optimistic note. I mean, I don't know whether the man is just a good-hearted man, but he finished on an optimistic note. He said, I mean, we can pull it off in another 40 years. Africa can pull it off. Yeah,
it's possible. If you start today, developments do not come immediately. What China is enjoying today started during the Great Leap Forward of Chairman Mao. Started in the 1950s. They didn't start really repealing it until probably the 1980s or something, almost 40 years after. And of course, a lot of water passes out the bridge, a lot of lives were lost, a lot of misery, but here they are today. So the problem is that we Africans, you and I want the quick win. We want to pray today, then hammer tomorrow. Our young men want to finish secondary school today and hammer tomorrow. And this mentality everywhere, even in government. Even our elected leaders, what can I steal in 4 years? What can I steal in 8 years? And I go and someone else comes. I mean, how do you develop under such circumstances?
Ladies and gentlemen, Reform Nigeria Television is brought to you by Lakim Investment. We're going to take the advert now, and hopefully we'll be able to come back. After the advert, we're going to look at the question that Governor Seyi Makinde asked and how Jeffrey Sachs answered it. Lakim Investment.
I think you're muted.
I can't believe it. So we're going to take the question that Governor Seyi Makinde asked at the program. I think it was and then we'll look at what Dr. Professor Sachs had to say about that question. So
make them pay a payroll tax later on from their higher earnings to repay those loans and finance all of this at a 40-year basis, 40-year tenor.
Thanks. Professor Sachs, we've got, of the 15 minutes that you gave us, we have used 7.
Okay, I'll be shorter in my answers.
Yeah, I've got at least 3 hands here. Oluse Makinde, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Sachs. I run a subnational in Nigeria, and my question is really very short. You want everybody to come together. You mooted the idea of West African Development Bank, East African Development Bank. But Africa has 1.4, 1.5 billion people, but we're 54 countries, with everybody trying to protect their own turf. Even in Nigeria, for instance, we have 36 states. 36 states, for everybody to work together, it's also a big problem. So what will be your suggested path? You know, remember this came from Berlin when in 18 whatever, you know, they partitioned
1885.
1885, they partitioned the entire continent. So I'd like to have your perspective towards this. Thank you so much.
Let me give you one quick answer. You know, in the United States, when the British colonies rebelled and won their independence, actually thanks to France, who fought the British in 1781, suddenly there were 13 independent nations, and they regarded themselves as independent. Carolina, Massachusetts, Vermont, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, New York, they thought were a country. And they tried for 7 years to act as 13 independent countries under a confederacy that they called the Articles of Confederation. It was a disaster. And then a very clever politician came along named James Madison and said, we're all going to go to hell unless we're able to get a real federal government. And he brought everyone to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. They worked for a few months. They had to convince all these 13 independent nations they're going to be better off. And they pulled it off. It was a little bit of a miracle. They pulled it off and made one country. So Africa has to do something like this. It has to strengthen the African Union. I don't say it's easy. Even the European Union, you know, sometimes is dysfunctional. It's 27, you're 55, and it's hard. But what I would like to see the new commission in Addis do, and it's coming into office actually next week, I want them to lay out a vision for Africa, a rapid growth vision, a success story. Here's what we can do if we work together. And then get key presidents from around Africa to say, okay, we're better off together than if we oppose this, and use the vision thing to push a much more structured approach. Because if you have a bold goal, then people can coalesce around the bold goal. But I don't want to oversimplify. This is hard political work to pull this off.
Deji, you are still muted.
Yes, thank you. So you can see that he's suggesting that Africa should come together. Now, I while reading Awolowo and a few of the Ghanaian man, Nkrumah, you know, I saw the idea of Pan-Africanism. Now, if Nigeria and other African countries have been able to get the idea of federalism well, where you have various nations scattered all over Nigeria and, of course, scattered all over Africa. These nations share the same origin, ethnicity, and most importantly, language. You know, if we can come together and work together as a nation, and Ghana and our other neighboring countries are working together, then that togetherness can still come and marry each other and form a greater unity towards economic success. Why am I saying this? I watched a lot of this woman, this bike woman that drove her bike from Belgium or where? Holland, and was going through Africa. I was watching, and you won't believe the kind of climate Africa has, the amount of rain, the land should go. If Oyibo people get hold of us this time around, there won't be anything freedom, there won't be independence. So let me have your thoughts, and we'll just try to begin to round up the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Deji. Yeah, Professor Sachs has very, very wonderful ideas and all that, but I think it's that's wishful thinking. Right now, as you and I are sitting here, Rwandan government is backing the M23 rebels in the DRC under the cover of protecting indigenous Tutsi population. But we know what the idea is. It's a mineral-rich region of the DRC. And we'll have Western government that are backing Rwanda covertly. I mean, so what are we saying? The thing is, even if you want to, Africa wants to try to come up and all that, we want to overlook our differences and everything. The powers that be would not allow it. People in Professor Sachs' country are funding these rebels. They are funding these skirmishes. It's just the reality. And of course, too, we still say something about the 13 colonies. They were united. If we remember, what became America today were disgruntled Britons, largely. They came from one place. They were all united in the opposition to King George.
Yes.
And his taxes. And that's where they started from. What's the unity? Where's the relationship between a lot of the sub-nationalities in Nigeria? Take, for instance, I lived in Jos for a while. In Jos town alone, there are 5 tribes. Wow. I grew up in Port Harcourt. In Port Harcourt town, Port Harcourt alone, there are at least 3, if not 4. Ikwere, the Calabarese stroke Okrikas, the Abuas, and maybe 1 or 2 others.
So those are 4
nations. Exactly, in one city, one small city. That's how multi-ethnic we are in Nigeria. They talk about the whole Africa. So it's Africa's problem is, it's unfortunate, but that's what we find ourselves in. Europe doesn't have this problem. They do not. Sweden, how many tribes are in Sweden? How many tribes are in Norway? You know, I mean, in Germany, of course, we know there were a lot of Germanic tribes, but they were united by language generally. We know the French were a lot of different people. They had to look for a national language for France, you know, that united everybody, you know. But of course, we know what the French Revolution is all about. Do you know the amount of blood that was shed during that period? Then the aftermath of the French Revolution under the rule of the Jacobins, Maximilien Robespierre, before his reign came to an end, you know. So are we ready for all these things? Even development, and we look at the rosy side where the people came out on the other side free. People talk about China. We didn't know 50 million Chinese had to perish during the Great Leap Forward. Are we ready to pay that price?
Well, we have 17 minutes. Let's finish with let's look at Professor Osagie. I just want us to look at his comment on a particular subject. I've forgotten what he was talking about, but let's look. It's just about a minute.
Right-wing tendencies, ultra-nationalism, and so on, are simply pointing in one direction. You know, that these countries, whether they're in Africa or Latin America or Asia, wherever they are, have to realize that they have to do things for themselves. You know, the days of humanitarian assistance are over. And I think that's the critical point, you know, that we should now all engage, you know, very seriously. The Lagos Plan of Action, 1980, had said, you know, there's no way Africa, for instance, can make progress except and until Africa is able to redeem itself and reassert not just its autonomy, but also its self-determined choices. And, you know, in the development process, you cannot, you know, play the role of, you know, the developee, you know, that is guided, you know, by the desires and the templates of those who give you money. You must create your own money. You must create your own wealth. So I think that It's not autarky meaning that, we can live in isolation. Nobody says that. But our response to deglobalization and the fact that, we are becoming even more marginalized. Look at the digital divide that the professor talked about earlier.
Learn valuable business and IT skills in your own time.
Look at the technological things and so on. It's the point where I think, the way forward for the global south, but especially for Africa, would be to use, that thing that everyone else talks about. Look for African solutions to African problems.
Okay, so I think a very good way to end our discussion today is to finish up with what? Look for African solution to African problems. The days of humanitarian assistance are practically over. Share, do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I do. I agree. And I think it's a good thing that the aid is drying up. The aid has made our leaders fat, has made everyone will open one NGO or the other. Let's offer business to Europeans. Let's offer business to Americans. We have the resources they want. Let's make deals. Let's ensure they bring their business here, they employ our people and transfer knowledge. That's how the Arabs developed what they have today. That's how the Arabs got to where they are today. It's not like they're more intelligent than Africans and all that. No, but they insisted on the kind of deals they signed with these companies. I was in Doha some time ago. I have a friend who worked at Qatar Gas. I had a cancel flight once, so I had to stay in an hotel there. He came to pick me and he took me into the city. And he explained, no matter how it is, the Qatarians ensured that a Qatari national always was with a white man, an American or whatever, who was doing any job, understudying him. And you have a fixed number of years that you are working there, you must leave so that the Qatari can take over. Right now, today, just before this a podcast I started, you and I was watching on channels where the president of Pengasan went to picket the head office of Sterling Global in Lagos, an Indian oil company, where you see cooks are Indians, gatesmen are Indians, cleaners are Indians in Nigeria.
Wow.
And Nigerian policemen and soldiers were guarding the gates of this company in Lagos.
Yeah.
Don't we have leaders in this country? Don't we have a government?
We don't.
So we have to work on to change these things. We have the potentials, the resources are there. We have what they want. Let us ensure that we get a fair share of it.
Yeah, I wrote a report some years ago. I got it to the table of the governor of Oyo State, Shima. They didn't do anything. How some companies in Oluyole were using Nigerians. Nigerians will stand for 12 hours on their feet, packing biscuits. It was terrible. So, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to end the discussion with my question or my comment to the webinar. I think it's a big deal. So, let's listen to it. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the time given to me. My question, or not a question, but a comment, I want to draw attention to what is happening presently in the international world, Russia, the crisis between Russia and Ukraine. And from my little research, I've come to understand that Russia was able to make the effort to invade Ukraine because Ukraine at some point gave up their nuclear weapons. Is Africa, Nigeria, and African countries, are we considering the possibility of a recolonization of Africa? Because the only thing that is needed to take over nations and also have access to their mineral resources is weapons, good education and weapons. And these things, for some reason, probably because of corruption and bad governance, we have not been able to develop our educational systems, and we do not have weapons to defend ourselves. So please, let's consider this. It's a real possibility, because if Russia and China defeats America in the world of politics, we're going to have a whole new paradigm shift, and freedom will be lost. And all these things that we take for granted today will no longer have them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks a lot.
All right, so that was my comment. There was also a response that was given by
Doctors nurses and engineers who have ever dreamed of living in
So I want to play that.
now have an opportunity.
Kagoro gave a comment, a response at 3:04:54. I need to just get there. I think this is it.
Brian Kagoro?
Just two small comments, Your Excellency. The Deji Yasufu suggests that recolonization can be combated by having weapons and good education. Let me just suggest to him that the tendency towards militarism and militarization is itself a trap. There are about 20 countries in the world that don't have militaries. When you look at their growth, their innovation, and etc., it actually is quite impressive for a good number of them. And the second comment relates to...
All right, so that's how Kagoro shut down my listing, but I mean, everybody has a right to their opinion.
But I'll say, Deji, that I think I'll give yours let's say 60% or let's say 55%, and his 45%. Right now, South Korea and Japan are realizing that maybe they've been stupid all along not to have militarized. Now we have a Trump who is ready to abandon America's treaties, America's promises to these non-armed nations.
Exactly.
That, oh, don't worry, we'll protect you. We have our soldiers there and all that. You don't have to worry about your adversaries and everything. And now they are having a rethink. So who says anything can happen tomorrow? Who said North Korea will go into South Korea tomorrow and America will just look the other way?
Ladies and gentlemen, I've had Oluse Fatoyinbo join me discussing Obafemi Awolowo. In 1951, Obafemi Awolowo took over government. They were not fully in government, but part of government. The action group they came into power and some part of government, and they rolled out their policies. In the early days of the 1930s, even during the Nigerian youth movement, they had always maintained the belief that education should be free and should be accessible to all young Nigerians. But where was the resources going to come from? They squeezed out money from everywhere until sometimes, I believe must have been in 1953, the Europeans, the British already were considering leaving Africa. And there was this, I think it was a cocoa marketing something that was federal, was being controlled by the federal government. But they now decided to regionalize it. In the process, a large sum of money came into the hands of the action group. What did they do? They channeled it into the free education, free primary education, universal primary education. I have a woman living in Bodija here who told me she was in school when it started. Free education, free everything, free. And then there was also medical health care for children up to the age of 18. They started it in 1st of January 1955, and they pulled it through. Okay, in 1962, Obafemi Awolowo was being investigated by the federal government. That case was what led to the Nigerian Civil War. But he was being investigated by the federal government for a case of treason. And they looked at this man's account, Sheye. They looked at this man's account. He had a bank balance of about £200 plus and a loan facility, debt facility of 20,000. 20,000. Sheye, 20,000 debt was on his neck, but the balance was 200 plus, maybe 209 or something. Today, everything has shifted. Okay, I don't know. We just pray. One of the ways the webinar ended was we all agreed that we must do something practical, And since I attended that webinar, Sheye, I've been thinking and I'm praying about it. That all this politics is dirty thing, we can't continue like this. We must start something that resembles that Nigerian youth movement of the 90s. We must start it. You understand? I might not run for government, but we must train our young people. They must get into the dirty waters of politics. We must make money. Okay? Sheye, make money. And we go and make money somewhere, put it in, and wrest power from these people, because they are not going to give power to us. We must do something practical. If not, and I don't have anywhere I'm dying to. I'm not dying anywhere. We're staying here. We're dying here. So let's have a closing remarks from you, and then
I'll say cheers to this new militant Deji. No, the thing is, the challenges look like sometimes when I think about it, at times it almost looks insurmountable. But the thing is, there's no challenge that is insurmountable. We are humans. We are meant to meet up challenges. If there are no challenges, we'll die off. So challenges are good. We know we have a problem. We know we should be doing better than this as a people, as a nation, as a country. So we just have to put in the dirty work. Your ideas are good, of course. That's the start. But I'm sure there are still a lot of other ideas, a lot of other pathways to achieve the good life that we want for the majority of our citizens and the betterment of our country. And I think it's just when there's a will, there'll be a way. We just need to go out. And now we have the will. Let's find ways to achieve it.
RNTV owes a great debt to the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation.com, organization. You can check out their website, obafemiawolowofoundation.com, and just look up all the resources. They have been around since 1992. They started 5 years after Papa died. I also want to thank Dr. Mrs. Awolowo Dosumu Olatokunbo Awolowo Dosumu, who I have been corresponding with her through WhatsApp, and she has been giving me information and things that I needed for this broadcast. I also want to thank Oluseyi Pato Ibo for being our guest. We have had to pull him off his duty. He's actually at work right now, so he's making out time for us. Thank you very much, Sheye. On Saturday, we were very likely going to be returning with the doctrine of God. We put it off for a while now, while we're pursuing this false teacher. What's that his name again? Selman, all over the place, But now we're returning back to the doctrine of God, and we'll try to look at something next week by the grace of God. Next week or upper week, we're going to have an entrepreneur, a lady, come to share with us during the week. Okay, this is Reform Nigeria Television. It is a parachurch ministry of Providence Reformed Baptist Church, Ibadan. We meet at the University of Ibadan. If you want to get to know more about our local church, please send me an email at newdgx@gmail.com. Thank you very much for being our guest, for hanging out there. God bless you, and bye-bye. Have a good night rest too.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you, Sher. Thank you. Just hang on, please.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.